And then there's Bruce. Bruce is the vice president of North American sales. I've actually known Bruce for 15 years. And Bruce, how many teams? How many teams in series? Then I'm going to go into a fun fact.
Man, okay, so I would say from a team standpoint, if you rope in from the regional level and the national level, probably 100 plus.
Wow.
A lot of that's on the regional level, right? Because we have regional budgets and national budgets. A lot of times on the national level, you've got teams like, Factory Yamaha, Factory Kawasaki, Factory Honda that we're all working with at that level. But we kind of work more with the series as opposed to the teams. When it gets to the national level, we look at doing programs with the actual race series as opposed to individual race teams. Yeah.
And does that all go through the two of you or through one department, or are there different marketing directors that deal with regional versus national?
So at the national level, it goes through Ben or I. Regional level, it goes through a regional manager. So we have 4 regional managers. They're responsible for what happens in their region. They have to decide, what's the best use of their budget. As far as how it's going to affect their sales in their region. They got to decide whether they're going to buy a billboard, whether they're going to sponsor a racetrack, whether they're going to sponsor a racer. What's the best use of those marketing dollars?
Got it. So let me ask you this, both of you guys, are you busy yet in 2021? 2020 was kind of a slow year, but how about 2021?
2020 was not slow. It fell off. We fell off a cliff in March. Okay. In June, it kicked back up again. So it's a short gap, but like in June, for June of 2020 and every month after that, It was a record month over the prior year.
Wow. In what series? In what areas were you more busy? Was it national, regional? Was it one series? Was it just in general? You mentioned motocross. I know motocross.
It was everything. I mean, we think about just in general, I'm looking at the business in general, right? So the business in general, I think everybody was cooped up and dying to get back to racing, right? As soon as they could. Okay. And so oddly enough, we didn't really expect it to come back that quick, but it did. And as everybody knows, especially in the power sports side of the business, go to a motorcycle dealership right now and you're going to find it very hard to find the motorcycle that you want. Everybody's out.
That's true.
And that started everywhere. It started last year. It hasn't recovered.
That's true. Backlogs everywhere is what we're hearing.
Yeah.
How about at the tracks? Are you seeing as much activity at the tracks, or is it just more on the enthusiast level? Because I'm wondering now, we have a lot of racers on the call or racers who are on the webinar who are looking for sponsorships, wondering, is it too late to get something this year in 2021, or should they be preparing for 2022 in terms of sponsorships?
I think right now it's probably 2022 at this point. Where budgets typically get set before the first of the year. You've pretty much kind of set your budgets. You're looking to kind of make those decisions in the fall of the year before.
Yeah, I'd say a couple exceptions to that might be if we're doing a deal for next year and we've tacked on, because of the amount of racing someone has for the back half of the year, we might tack that onto an agreement and make it a multi-year agreement. But otherwise, like Bruce said, we're looking at 2022 now.
What does the VP Fuel sponsorship look like right now? Has it changed at all over the past year? Or are you looking more for social? Because if people aren't going to events, you still want them to activate on your behalf online, or is it business as usual?
I think social has got a lot, obviously becomes more important. And I know Ben has put together a lot more programs and a way to rate the sponsorship value too. So I'll let him explain that.
Yeah, I would say probably what changed for us from last year to this year is likely me, because my approach is different. The person before me had a different approach. The contracts were written differently. Our expectations are a little bit different now. So the budget has not necessarily grown exponentially, but the asks have. We're getting a lot of asks. And it's, there's a perception probably that we're a bigger company than we are. And so our expectation when I'm evaluating these, there's an opportunity cost, because I can get, say, 8 to 12x return on ad spend, just about anything else I do in marketing. And so when I ask a driver or someone who's looking for a sponsorship, about the value, and we talk about the value that they can add, it really has to do with the kind of content they can generate to nurture someone through the buyer's journey, right? Because we get a lot of awareness level content, either organically or through other sponsorships and presence that we have, tracks, and elsewhere. And what's harder to get is that consideration and decision level content. So things like on the consideration level, how-to videos, technical videos, technical data, testimonials, usage content, things that can help us with either B2B sale or boost value that we can bring to a B2B partner, or on the product level, on the B2C side, is it something we can add to a posting on Amazon and Walmart.com and on our own website, and that sort of consideration level content, or are they going to be able to share a promotion that we're doing at the decision level? So, can we direct some sort of dotted line back to their effort and sales that were generated? So, we're looking at these folks as a extension of our marketing team. We can't be there all the time.
And
We
the
can't
sales
be at
team.
every track.
And extension sales team.
And the sales team. Yeah, exactly.
That's a good point.
Exactly. And so
Mhm.
they really need to be good ambassadors of our brand. And that sometimes is easy to say at negotiation time, and then they get busy with the year, and the year gets by, and all of a sudden they're looking back, and we're looking back, and we're having a hard time pinpointing the value that they added for the year. So that's when we reevaluate what we're going to do for the next year.
First, do you have room for more brand ambassadors in the future, or are you full right now? If someone wanted a sponsorship from VP Fuels, what would attract your attention? What does someone on this call have to do to stand out, to make them valuable, so they can become a part of your marketing team or an extension of your marketing efforts in areas that you can't reach?
Yeah, on the marketing side, so I would say we are in fact pretty full, but what I do anticipate is that we'll be reshuffling the deck a little bit on where that budget gets allocated next year. So we do a lot of what I'd call dipping our toe in water with a lot of partners. And so if there's an opportunity for us to dip our toe in the water, and again, there's a perception where we've got deeper pockets and a larger budget than what we do. And so, for us to be able to either test an audience or someone who has a really good lookalike audience for us, and we can try something on maybe a product discount or some sort of product deal before we're able to justify, because there is a justification process to any cash dollars that are going to be going out the door, and those are hard fought dollars. So it's a whole lot easier to dip our toe in the water with some product deals, and let's see if we are good partners for each other, because in some cases it could be that we're not a good partner for them, and they may be great, or vice versa. And so that's probably what we'd be pique our interest at this point in the year, looking ahead.
That's interesting. So what does a VP Fuel sponsorship look like? I'm assuming, obviously you just said at the very beginning, it's probably product or discount. If you have a brand ambassador or a team that does a really good job, I'm assuming you're going to hold on to them and start giving them some kind of cash. Do you also include them in your marketing? Do you help their expenses when they go to races? What does a VP sponsorship look like? Are they getting mostly fuel? Are they getting marketing? Are they getting dollars? And this is a team that you've now had on board for a few years, let's say.
Bruce, you want me to start?
Sure.
Yeah, so for somebody we have a relationship with that we've been working with for a while, and we work well together, it's probably a combination.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say there's a formula as far as, so for us, and what's, I guess, somewhat unique is we have additives, we have lubricants, we have coolants, we have fuel, we have things that are even beyond that, such as licensed branded stores, such as gas stations and marinas, and we have specialty chemicals, and we have so many different products. So for us, we may be a lubricant sponsor of one person and a fuel sponsor of another. And of course, the amount of consumables one might use, that product mix and the cash mix is going to be different, probably by product.
Okay.
If we sponsor them, say across those four examples, fuel, additives, or I should say a fuel, lubricant, coolant, and additives, let's say, that's a little bit different than someone where we're just the coolant sponsor, or we're just the fuel sponsor. So I wouldn't say there's a standard formula. But at the end of the day, like Bruce mentioned, and they're an extension of the marketing team and an extension of the sales team. So he knows how much he's got to sell, or they've got to sell, to cover whatever that cost is. And so that it's really that on the marketing side, we're looking at that return on ad spend. On the sales side, they're looking at how much product they can move.
You said something really interesting, is I think a lot of people don't realize just how large, okay, you keep saying VP Fuels is much smaller than racers expect or think in terms of sponsorship wise, but the company itself is in so many more business areas that I think a lot of people realize. You got your racing fuels, you have the gas stations, the branded stations. There's actually one in my hometown. We have a VP station. You also have the consumer products. You have premix oils in Home Depot. And with the big product mix like that, how is it that you select different people to represent you for the different product categories? Or what is it that you look for in a property when you're going to sponsor them? Is it because they approached you and you thought, okay, this is a good marketer, could be a good fit? Or do you actively seek out ambassadors and representatives?
So I can start, and Bruce can add, because he's been with the company so long. He remembers when we used to record things in stone tablets. And so the relationship in almost every case I can think of, the relationship was there before the sponsorship, because these regional managers and Bruce and my team, we're at the races, we're at the track, we're at the events, and typically there's some kind of relationship first. So there are cases certainly where we reached out to someone because they were already such a ambassador of the brand, and we didn't have a working relationship yet, and we wanted to keep them as an ambassador of the brand. And so there are certainly opportunities like that, but by and large, there was a relationship. They've got some history as a racer. They are an ambassador of the sport. They are compatible from a lifestyle and personality to what our brand needs. And then that's usually where that discussion starts. I can't think of many opportunities where someone approached us cold and there was a sponsorship that resulted beyond possibly some product.
As I'm glad you said that, because I was just about to ask that next, and maybe Bruce knows this better since he's been there a while longer. Has VP Fuels ever sponsored someone they have never met? Or have you always gotten to know somebody first before you've sponsored them? And I guess the question I'm asking is, if someone sends you a deck blind, an unsolicited deck or a proposal, do you ever just send them a sponsorship, or do they have to get to know you first?
It's rare. We probably have to get to know them. You got to remember, like we're trying to run. We've got a lot of things that we're trying to do from a business standpoint. You're right. You mentioned all the different things that we're involved with. So to get an email out of the blue or a sponsorship proposal out of the blue, it's really hard to focus on that. So typically it's people that we know, that we come across, that are racing, that we've built, kind of long-term relationships with, and we trust, and we know that they're going to do well by the brand, or there's some other connection. Okay. So give you an example. I won't specifically say what company, and this is an obvious one, right? This would be obvious. President of a company that also races, that has a bunch of retail stores. Okay, that's a pretty easy decision on who you're going to sponsor, right? But it all ties back into, I know from Ben's side of it, it's the marketing value, and he has a way to rate that, right, on the spend. On the sales side, it's also how does it tie into increasing sales, right? We're in the business for 46 years, so another logo on another vehicle doesn't move the needle. Okay, so it's really what other connections are there that would help us get product into on the shelf somewhere or into some other retailer, because maybe you have relationships that connect us with somebody. And so that really becomes important too. You're on mute. I can't hear you.
Yeah, Alex, I think we lost your sound.
Yeah, we lost your sound, Alex. Rule number 1, plug it in. Next rule number 2 is turn it on.
So today I'm going to make a introduction here. We don't have Tammy. Today I have a professional helping me instead of a teacher. And that's what happens when I don't have my wife, the teacher, helping. No, just so you guys know, today, this is all my fault because I plugged in the microphones. Typically, Tammy does all this stuff and she gets me all set up. But I do have someone operating the computer, and that's George Hamill from the Dirt Life Show. Do you guys know George from Dirt Life? Let's see. Whoop. That's a podcast. I was on one of his podcasts. And so George is helping out since Tammy's visiting family in Pismo Beach today. So sorry about the microphone. Oops. Anyway, so in 2008, Bruce, you and I went on a motorcycle ride that Cameron Steele hosted. It was the Rip to the Tip.
This is short. This is a short one.
Yeah, it's just a short. It was only 6 days, only 1,400 miles. I think
Yeah.
over half of the riders dropped out before the ride was over, and they had to truck it in to Cabo.
Right.
But I want you to tell a little bit about that ride real quick, and then why it's significant, because Cameron has used that ride now as a way to market his sponsors. And you are obviously the VP Fuels guy on that ride. So it's also not just a fun ride that on an annual basis, but it generates content that then helps promote the brand.
You know, that ride started out as just, 12, 16 buddies getting together, riding down the peninsula. Everybody races, and said, hey, why don't we just go on a ride down there and just actually enjoy the scenery instead of racing, which you really don't get to see very much, right? And then it morphed into, well, we want to invite more of our friends to experience this ride. So obviously you got an invite on that one. And then I think you invited one of your buddies, right? And so that has since grown. And of course, Cameron's really good with his sponsors, right? But he saw an opportunity there to do, we got a lot of these reality shows, and some of these so-called reality shows are somewhat staged to some extent. Well, this is a reality show that is not staged, right?
I can vouch for that because I went on that ride live for 6 days. There's nothing staged about that. It's 200 to 300 miles a day off-road from the top of Baja down to the tip of Cabo. So yeah, I know.
You never know what's going to happen. You never know what you're going to capture. We just know that some sections are going to be difficult, and something's going to happen. We don't know what, and you just got to make sure you capture. But it's turned into, now it's a big production, right? From when we first went on the ride, but now it's sponsored by, we're a sponsor of it. It's sponsored by Monster Energy. There's a helicopter that follows us the whole way now. We don't eat off of the tailgate of the trucks anymore. It got kind of bougie a little bit. We get shrimp scampi in the middle of nowhere now. It's like, I kind of missed the days.
Peanut butter when we went on that trip.
I know. I missed the days of just peanut butter and jelly.
We had
peanut butter and jelly at the end of the tailgate.
Oh man, I had no idea.
I kind of missed the peanut butter and jelly days off the end of the tailgate. But yeah, it's got way past that. But now it's an hour show on World of X Games, and the sponsors got a lot more exposure. And again, that came out of just relationships, right? We had the relationship with Cameron, him being a racer, and you just build on those existing relationships. You never know what kind of opportunities might come out of it. And this was, who knew that it would end up being a TV show?
And Alex, as you mentioned with these other brands, in that case, Cameron Steele is a great example of someone who has done a good job promoting one of our extensions of our brand, which is the branded stores. And we have branded gas stations in Baja Sur, and they'll stop at those on the way down. And it's a big production. it's a big deal in Baja Sur. It gets a lot of TV coverage. So that adds a lot of value to those partners of ours that are in Mexico. And it's a real value add that he does.
So the reason I brought that up is because a bunch of racers go on that ride, and no racers were in a race. It was all on their own time. It was almost, I mean, it was a week vacation. Literally, I took time off from work to go on that, and it was fun. But in the meantime, it was a method of content collection, which the content can then be used to promote. So as you're doing something fun and having a good time, if it's interesting enough that you can film and create content, this is now on World of X Games, this ride. So you don't just have to be at a race or at an event in order to promote a sponsor. You can do it off hours, in between races, off season.
Well, actually, that's a great point, because one of our sponsors, one racer, I'll say racer, someone who's getting into racing, who's actually a UFC fighter, but it's a great lookalike audience for us. And most of his promotion is stuff he does on the free time, whether it's snowmobiling, he's using our snowmobile, our sled 96, he's using lubricants, he's cleaning his car with our cleaning and wax products and appearance products. He's using our jugs. He just lives the brand. If you're gonna up a generator or a small engine, what else would you want to use except for small engine fuels? There's nothing better. So, he just lives it, and it's just a natural extension. So it doesn't seem staged. It doesn't seem, it doesn't affect his credibility as an influencer. It seems more organic and authentic. So those really help. That's a good point, Alex.
So is that something new that you're starting to now also sponsor influencers as opposed to just racers versus, let's say, 20 years ago? I know VP was just into racing. Are there now more personalities, people with followings who have influence that could help the brand in addition to this one person you're mentioning?
Yeah, so that is certainly one of the, I won't call it a criteria, but it certainly is a data point when we're looking with, let's say, there's a couple contracts we've signed recently, and it's fair to say those are folks that don't have less than 100,000 followers on social. Right. And so, not that that's a magic number, but our brand has in each channel north of 100,000 followers. So we're looking for people who can help extend and reach far beyond that. So I can tell you, we've had 8,400 branded posts so far this year. Wow. For about, oh gosh, I'm going to get this wrong, but I know it's at least 84 million views. And so on those branded posts. So our reach is good. The views are good. But we're not posting. If we post 8,400 times, that would do almost nothing for us. In fact, it would probably hurt our algorithm. And so now that's just for the 25 to 30 that we're tracking actively. So certainly we've had more post and reach than that, but that is part of the value equation when you're looking at how someone can add value to the brand in a measurable way, because that's something measurable, and I can get analytics from that, and that's meaningful.
So Ben, you said two things that really caught my attention. Earlier, you were speaking about lookalike audiences, and just now you mentioned algorithms. So the implication to me is that social media, how to find lookalike and similar audiences through YouTube, Google, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, obviously, and then you have those social powerhouses find audiences that match the criteria of fans and followers who you probably have information for, such as a phone number or email address, and then they find a lookalike audience that you can promote or boost posts to. Is that what you're doing? Am I getting that right?
So yeah, to some extent, certainly. So there's different ways you can use that. So let's just think about content distribution. So I can post something on my channel, and I have just the distribution of my followers. Okay. If a athlete or someone we're sponsoring or series shares that content. Now we've got that reach, or vice versa. So that's on the organic side. Or if I want to target a particular audience and do lookalike audiences on the paid side, because I can do boost and paid social, that's where that also becomes helpful. And so, we do a combination of both, some organic, some boosted. And frankly, our boosted post performance is really, really good. And part of that is a bit of what we've curated and the company that we keep on the organic side. But,
Okay.
so it's a little bit of both.
So a question I have then is, do you educate some of your brand ambassadors and your teams on how to boost their own posts and find their own lookalike audiences? Do you have funds that you can give to people, outside of your immediate 100,000 reach to try to help them reach more and thereby spread your message to new audiences through their first hub instead of through yours?
So that's an interesting point. With B2B partners, we have done that. And some of the partners, such as Race Series, offer they think that way, and so we work together a little better. They kind of, I'll say, get it a little bit more because they're running a business. They understand we've got a business to run. I would say on the athlete side, I would be willing to co-op dollars with someone, but that actually has not come up yet.
Interesting.
And it would be it would be something I'd completely be open to. And as my team hears me say, a rising tide rises all ships. And I'd love to be able to build something with a partner, and that's the way we view these. These are partnerships, and that's, as I mentioned earlier. Sometimes we're not a good partner for you, or you're not a good partner for us, and that's okay. But we view these partnerships, and we do try to educate. We'll do calls. We use a tool or multiple tools that we can provide insight into their activity for them, and help them see the add value that they're bringing to us. And talk about those expectations, and so those conversations do happen.
That's good. That's I think next level of marketing is now taking advantage of all these social networks and their reach. And the key word is algorithms, because they change, but they don't change every day. They stay around for a year or so where you can figure them out before they change. And that's a great way to build new audiences. Let me ask this. If a racer wanted to reach out to you guys, are the opportunities right now with the branded stations? Is it with the racing fuels? Is it with the lubricants and the products? Or is it, opportunity with all four business categories equally? Is there one area? Because Bruce, a few years ago, when you, actually it was maybe now 5 or 6 years ago, when you came to me, you said, oh, we just have a few stores. And then you came a year later and said, oh, we're up to 100 stores. Oh, we have 500 stores. Oh yeah, we're going to have 5,000 stores before you know it. That was a focus. Do you still have business segments that you're focusing on and could use help with brand ambassadors who understand how to market, and thereby you can tap into their marketing and help, or their reach, and then help market the brand?
Yes, we do. I mean, it's more on the racing performance side.
Okay.
All categories, whether it's fuel, lubricants, coolants, brake fluid, and probably obviously in a totally different category would be on the small engine fuel side. So if most of your people on here are probably from the racing industry, and so that doesn't really necessarily have a big crossover. It has some crossover, but doesn't have a huge crossover into the outdoor power equipment side. So we look for people that are more embedded on the outdoor power equipment side for that. But and the branded stations is a different deal. Just so everybody knows, we don't own those sites. They're brand license agreements, so not sites that we own. But anytime that we have a program, we try to tie in with all our divisions. Anything we can do to cross market and benefit all the divisions, we try.
Excellent. And if someone wanted to reach out to you guys or meet you, what's appropriate? Should they go to SEMA and try to shake your hand, or PRI, or a trade show, or a race, or do they reach out through LinkedIn? how do you like to be approached if someone has a pretty compelling story that might actually interest your brand? What's a good way for them to reach out to you?
Well, I can tell you my personal opinion about trade shows. Okay. So from a
Yeah, tell
sales
me.
standpoint, salespeople are there to sell, right? So I think a lot of us get a little bit annoyed when we get bombarded with people with sponsorships, because to me, it's not very personal, right? I think it's they're there because they know they've got a target rich environment. And I know they're walking around handing that same proposal to 100 different people. Okay. Not very personal. I prefer getting a phone call. Hey, I'm going to be at SEMA. Team's going to be at SEMA. We'd really like to set up an appointment and maybe meet with you, show you what we can offer. That approach is way better than just cold, like I call it cold calling at a trade show and try to hand us a deck to review while we're there. Now, from the marketing side, that might be different. Okay. From the sales side, the sales team is there. We're there. Our focus, we're spending money at that show to sell product to our customers.
Yes.
Okay. Now, usually we have a marketing team there, and Ben may have a different view of that, but from the sales side, that's kind of our opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with Bruce. A call is certainly better, possibly an introductory email. But the reality is, I probably get no less than 5 email pitches a week. I get a lot of LinkedIn requests, probably daily, probably one a day. And the breadth of things we're trying to do in the marketing department, I wish I could respond to all of them, but I can't. I can't even take the time to read many of them. And so it's got to be either start with a relationship or start with a phone call, and maybe we schedule a meeting if we're at an event. Or we do a lot with video conference and Microsoft Teams and Zoom. So I don't even mind doing some of those things. But I think what sometimes people don't realize is simply how busy we are trying to run a business. And this is not the only thing we do in marketing or on the sales team to market the brand. So, that's where that opportunity cost comes in, because I know the 200 other campaigns I've got going on and what that return on ad spend is. So, and I've got to make those successful. So there's a limit on the amount of time we can spend, unfortunately, on responding to these pitches.
I think it's difficult a little bit with the nature of our product. Everybody needs to understand is that, number one, we're dealing with hazmat, right? Hazardous materials. We don't have the luxury of just at least on the race fuel side, you don't have the luxury of throwing in a box, paying a couple bucks freight and shipping it out to somebody, right? So it becomes a logistical challenge to do sponsorship programs when it comes to fuel. Now we've got a lot of other products that are a lot easier, okay? But the fuel does become a challenge. It's very expensive to ship. It's not very easy. You've got hazmat fees. You've got, when the customer gets it, it's how do you get it off? You receive a 400-pound drum. How do you move it around, right? So there are some challenges too when it comes to just the nature of the product that we deal with.
Hey, Ben, I was going to ask you're obviously very analytical and you're calculating returns. You can't obviously calculate a ROI or any kind of return for all couple hundred or 100 properties that you're involved with. Are there some that stick out that you watch more than others, or do you require proof of performance, or do you have certain metrics that you'd like your teams to show you to show that they've been performing on your behalf and actually fulfilling their sponsor obligations, or at least what you need them to do on your behalf for marketing? How can you keep track of so many teams, I guess is what I'm asking, or so many
so it is
properties?
tough. And that's where we do use some tracking tools and tracking software. So, it would be a full-time job for several people if they had to do all the social listening and collecting all those analytics individually. So we do have premium enterprise level tools that we use to do that. And something I mentioned earlier is we do look at the adjusted ad value that someone can bring. So there are some targets on things like number of posts, amount of content, frequency, and then at the bottom of that list is adjusted ad value. And so we can look at it's a weighted algorithm. So, a post that is entirely about us is, the weight of that post is much better, or the quality of that post, the quality score that it's given is much higher than if we are simply the logo on the shirt or the logo on the car, or we're the BP jug in the background while they're talking about something else. And this particular tool does also scrape video, so it's not just pictures and written content, also video content. So there are those things, and then as we mentioned earlier, it's if they said, and I can give a really good example because Ray Everham with SRX, the guy gets it, and he got it right out of the gate when we were talking about a sponsorship, and he committed to producing more content for us than I would have even been comfortable asking for.
Wow.
But he knows how to deliver value, and frankly, his new SRX series is doing just that. I mean, they look for opportunities to bring us value without coming back with hat in hand looking for something else every time. They
Nice.
just do it, and it's not costing us a dime every time they add something else of value. He looks, and his team looks for ways to add value, and that makes them a really good partner.
Excellent. Are
Hey,
there easy ways for, go ahead, Bruce, go ahead.
I say going above and beyond the expectations gets noticed.
Yeah. Under promise and over deliver. We hear that a lot.
Yep.
So are there easy ways for startup teams, young teams, amateur teams that are not yet as experienced with a lot of the analytics and the data? Can they use Google Analytics, Facebook Analytics, YouTube Analytics? Is that an easy way to help your job, or is your proprietary software pretty much the way that the enterprise software, the way that you track your results?
Yeah, so I actually, as far as deliverables from a athlete or a team or a series, the only thing I'm looking for them to deliver is the content, something quantifiable. On the analytics side, I don't need them to pull any data from me because I'm pulling my own data.
Got it.
If I receive something, I'm going to compare it to my numbers to see how those things mesh up. There are a lot of times where, and I can think of a few examples where there's some offhanded mention of VP, or there's we're in the background, and I think they perceive that they've delivered more value than they have, and I think that's that's where it becomes a little subjective because their perception of value is clearly different than ours. And then we've got to have a conversation to make sure we're on the same page of what moves the needle for us. And I'm happy to share our metrics, but really our metrics are the numbers we're looking at. I'm not looking, with the exception of TV sponsors, where we're doing that sort of broadcast or streaming video, and we need a performance report. The rest of it, I'm going to generate my own analytics.
Okay, interesting. You're one of the first that doesn't require periodic or frequent proof of performance from a lot of the teams. You do it yourself. I like that. That's probably the way of the future, just to make sure that the information you're getting is accurate. Are there
and not everybody wants to pay a premium for a enterprise level tracking software either. So, but I would imagine that most of the large sponsors are using the tool that we're using. The large brands are, at least.
Is it
and we're probably one of the smaller brands. You said it.
Yeah, I know Scott Tilton, so it's
yeah, great people over there. They've built a great tool. They're great to work with, and their focus is on brands. They're not trying to sell to individual athletes or teams necessarily. So they've done a great job. I respect everything they've done. Great group.
Yeah, and Fran does a good job over there as well. I know Fran Richards is,
Yep.
Probably
Fran's
a
great.
sports guy. Yeah, they do a great job. Are there any teams that really stick out that have done a outstanding job? And it doesn't just have to be a team. It could be a racing series as well, or a property that you're involved with. Just
Yeah, I would say Bruce probably had a lot of examples, but for me, most recently, it would be SRX. Kind of that back to the example we were just
Right.
talking about. Last week, late last week, we got a message saying, hey, it wasn't, would you like to be on a car, or, for X dollars, we'll put you on a car. They said, we're putting you on a car. It's car 13. Here's what it's going to look like. And it was done. It was almost done before we even said, okay.
nice.
And their series, was number 2 behind NASCAR over the weekend, ahead of Formula One on viewership. So they delivered a ton of value just by doing things like that. And that was a great example. Is they just say, hey, we're doing this for you. We're not asking for anything. This is going to give you more value.
Nice. Now I heard Bruce say, over deliver. There we go. Now I'm
Yeah,
being George.
we had a couple of cases with some of the factory teams we deal with on the moto side, that even though we have, and they're a little bit more structured on the contracts, you don't really expect to get much more than what is in the agreement. But there's a couple of them that all of a sudden our logo started showing up on all the licensed apparel, and that was never in the agreement. So that was a nice little bonus that was kind of unexpected, right?
Yeah, that's cool. That's it. VPs everywhere. You go to motocross, you see it everywhere. So I don't know how many of those are paid versus just comp sponsorships, but you definitely have a community that appreciates the brand and the product and uses it, hopefully to increase their performance. So yeah, they're everywhere. George is signaling to me that we have some questions in the chat room. George, why don't you turn your microphone up there, and I'll let him read them this time.
Sure, sounds good. Because of COVID, were there more funds allocated for experimental projects?
Did you guys hear that?
Yeah, so as far as funds for experimental projects, so we have tried different things as a result of COVID. Frankly, one example is something everyone's seen at restaurants, and that's the use of the QR code.
Yeah.
So we're putting QR codes on things, on stickers, on banners at the track. There were times where we had stickers that ended up above a stall in the bathroom, or on a trash can at the track. And at 2:00 in the morning, I don't know what people were doing there, but we were getting enter to win entries at 2 in the morning from a track. And so we have tried other things, certainly even on the experiential side. And if there's an opportunity for us to bring value to a B2B partner, by bringing them together with one of our sponsored drivers or a series or something of that nature, certainly experiential is becoming bigger. And so it's marrying some of those things and trying to add value across the platforms. And you even think about getting things off the shelves. So we've got distributors and dealers. We want to help them move product off their shelves. That to me is the most important thing. And so if there's a way for us to connect the dots there, we're trying to do more of that. So it absolutely started out of things that happened during COVID, but I think those were also some of the trends that just got accelerated.
That's a great question. You mentioned distributors and dealers. Do you ever offer pass-through rights to some of your B2B partners where you may sponsor a racer, a team, or a property, but then you allow your partner, B2B partner, maybe a distributor or a store, to actually have the deliverable and get the visibility and exposure from it?
We have done some things similar to that. It hasn't been necessarily carte blanche where we've given someone access where we didn't put together the campaign hand in hand. And it's maybe even in areas you wouldn't think, like small engine fuels and helping get stuff off of shelves. Or interestingly enough, we do have racers that also are into RC and racing. And that's we've got the best hobby fuels that you can possibly buy. So, if they're living our brand, they're using some of those products as well. And so that helps those RC and hobby dealers, things of that nature.
right on. Right, that's a great question. One more question here from
Yeah,
George
we got
from the chat room.
you're involved in the Canadian Porsche Carrera Cup Series. Do you see yourselves expanding into other Canadian series? The new FEL Canadian Sports Car Series started this weekend, and I wondered if you would look at a new series like this. Would you guys do this, or would another VP team do the Canadian side?
Okay, it was very faint, but I think I got that. So we will look at any new series. So we already promote some series at Race in Canada. I know it didn't continue, but we were associated with the IMSA series that also ran the Canadian Porsche series up there. And I think it was last year. I think it was the year before.
Right.
Okay. But yes, we would like, if there's opportunities for us to sponsor a series, whether internationally, we're looking in Europe at series, we're looking at Mexico in certain series. So we're always looking how we can help promote the brand outside of just the 48 states, because we're an international company.
All right. So the next question is, Bruce or Ben, are you currently partnering with Tony Perella Racing and any of his SVRA series, Sports Car Vintage Racing Association? If not, would you be interested in an intro or exploring synergies? And that comes from Ronald Steven.
Yes.
Okay, I can make that.
Yes, we would be interested, but no, we're not currently involved. I've had some conversations with SVRA, and I think he's also involved in the Trans Am series, if I'm not mistaken. We were the official fuel of Trans Am a few years ago for about 3 or 4 years, and unfortunately we lost it to another fuel supplier. But we'll love an opportunity to get it back. And yes, I'd entertain any conversations to try to do something with SVRA.
And Bruce, to get that conversation started with them, how would you structure something like that? If Ron goes back and speaks with Tony and mentions, hey, I'll get you in front of VP Fuels, what would you seek from that? Them to use your fuel, obviously, maybe.
Well, you got to explore a lot of different things, right? It's hard because it's a series. Look, these guys aren't driving around in big haulers, right? They're showing up more of a kind of a club level thing. So you got small trailers that a lot of them probably can't haul their own fuel. So a lot of times it comes down to whatever's available at the track is what they end up using. So that's a little bit of a disadvantage to try to work something out on the fuel side with SVRA, especially when it's like whatever fuel's at the track, that's what we're going to use. But we've got lubricants, we've got coolants, we've got brake fluid, we've got a lot of other things that we can get a little bit more involved. And there are some events that I think SVRA holds. I'm not 100% familiar, but they have some big either regional or national programs, because we've actually went and serviced them before. Now, we can't physically service probably every event that they do because they do quite a few events, right? But I'd love to at least get a conversation with Tony going about that. I met with some of the guys at an SVRA event. I think it was at COTA 2 years ago. I had some initial conversations in 19, I believe it was. I think they did a big event at COTA, and then, COVID came around and everything kind of came to a halt. But would love to open that conversation up again.
Okay,
All right,
Ron,
so
I can put you guys in touch.
the final question, it looks like it comes from Megan. It says, if a team or series does go above and beyond, example, putting a logo on merchandise that wasn't in the contract, is that something that's expected the following year?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. I wouldn't say necessarily that it's expected. It's, that kind of creativity and creative thinking. We like to think big here as well. So there's always opportunities to do things. But if, particularly when these are multi-year contracts, if you do something like that in year one, I'm not necessarily expecting that it's going to happen forever. It could be a negotiation point the next time around on a contract where, the only thing that's constant is change. And so the racers and some of these series and year to year, things are different. What they're planning to do is different. If they're planning on racing, say domestically versus we've got a athlete we sponsor who's going to be doing more internationally this year. All these variables change. And so, something that was possible this year may not be possible next year. It may not make sense for us again. It's, as the example with SRX, they put us all over a car this last week. I'm not expecting them to do it next week or next year. It's a multi-year contract that's not in the contract. And it was just a really nice gesture for them to do that. And that's the way I look at it is we're partners together. If you're able to sell that to someone else and get money for it, and you gave it to me for free, I'd tell you to sell it because you're trying to run a business too. And I get that. And so I wouldn't necessarily expect it.
That's cool. That's a great question. Thanks, Megan. Were there any more in the chat room?
Looks like
We
I
got
have one more question.
One more question here. So if an individual, this just came in from Anthony, if an individual racer can introduce VP into a new sport, rock bouncers that have a huge reach on social media and YouTube potential, huge new target area that is unwrapped, and dot the lines between VP and series managers, could that result in support of the series and a race?
That's a tough question. So I don't know what Bruce's thoughts are on that, but at the end of the day, nothing happens till someone sells something. And so for us, we've got to be able to look at a deal and connect the dots on how we're going to sell something to that audience. It's kind of that opportunity cost. If those same dollars could be spent somewhere else, it's hard when you're maybe starting something up to a lookalike audience and that audience isn't going to consume the product right away. That's why a lot of time those deals have something built in to where there's it's a spec fuel or lubricant or something like that to help cover some of those costs. But yeah, it really comes down to the math and how do we sell something as a result.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, this is, once again, these go really fast. I mentioned before the call, this is going to go pretty quick. I try to keep it as on time as I can. And I try to, as you guys know, go as fast as I can. So there's really not a fluff or BS. But before we close here, and by the way, Bruce, you weren't on when I was mentioning this to Ben, is right after this, when I turn off the main camera, I'll walk over to my computer and I'll turn on the computer camera and just answer some one-on-one questions up close and personal. You guys please stay on and we'll just do one-on-ones with some of the attendees for 5 or 10 minutes. But before we do that, what's next on the agenda? What races or events might you be going to in the next couple of weeks, months, or later this year? What's next?
Well, the company itself, we have people that we're probably at 8 to 10 events every weekend, right? So we're always, there's always something going on. Each region probably has 2 or 3 events typically stacked up on every weekend. So for me personally, I mean, we've got so many different series that we're involved with that, obviously I can't go to every single event of every series, and neither can Ben. And we don't physically have the time, but we try to get out to at least an event or 2 of each series that we're involved with. When they come to Coda, it makes it real easy because it's a short drive.
Yeah. Well, you were just in San Diego, man. You should have, next time you got to schedule a day down here to stop. Cause I know
we were down for the Baja. We were down there. Yeah, we were down there for the 500.
Right.
So we were at the Indy Grand Prix. Obviously we're at SRX. We're at every SRX race. Now, not me personally, but we have staff there that's at every SRX race. We'll be at every, the motocross nationals that we got running right now. We're at all of those. We've got all the IMSA events that we're attending. We've got all the Road to Indy events that we're attending as a fuel supplier. So there's a lot a lot happening. And of course, then you got the off-road stuff. You got SCORE, Best in the Desert, Core. We're at all those events.
Great American Short Course. Yeah.
Yep.
All of them king of
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
Mountains.
even like this weekend, you've got Pikes Peak. I mean, there's other kind of one-off events like that will be at those.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I hope to see everybody on the call at an upcoming race in the near future. Both of you two, as well as the attendees, the racers on the call. Hopefully we can all connect in person at some point. We'll see.
Absolutely.
We'll see. Gentlemen,
Appreciate you having us on, Alex.
stay on for a couple more minutes. I'm going to walk over and we'll do some quick one-on-ones. Thanks, everybody. Thank you
Okay.
for joining.
Thank you.
Take care.